Hey there, it's Megan. So I have not posted at all this week yet about the Etsy seller strike that is taking place. And the reason I haven't posted is because I, not surprisingly, have a lot of thoughts on it. And I wanted to have a little bit of a more nuanced discussion as far as what was happening. So if you are completely unaware, Etsy sellers this week are on strike because Etsy implemented another round of fee increases. So I don't remember exactly what the Etsy fee started at, but as of this time, it is now up to 6.5%. So it's a 6.5% transaction fee anytime a seller on Etsy makes a sale. So I want to just start off by saying 100% unequivocally, I stand in solidarity with the Etsy sellers who are striking. I fully support the strike. There is no question and no doubt about that. And I do believe that that is the whole purpose of the strike, is it's time for the sellers to take a stand. Now, I also will say that the reasons the strikers are striking are very good. So Etsy came out and said that they were doing this round of fee increases because they are doing more to support and promote the artists and makers on the platform. And so they need to be able to charge more to make those investments happen. But what Etsy is neglecting to say in that statement is that in the last several years, Etsy has had record profits. And so they are saying one thing: we need to basically have sellers pay more to support these investments. Meanwhile, the Etsy stockholders, the shareholders, the upper management, they are making record amounts of profit. So it is 100% valid that Etsy sellers are upset and worked up and striking. That being said, I do not think that anyone should have been surprised by what is happening with Etsy. So I want to preface this by saying I do not think that Etsy is completely bad. I think Etsy has done some, not all, but done some really solid things for the art and handmade community. Do I think Etsy has its flaws? Yes. Have I ever been shy about saying that? Absolutely not. I have been critical of Etsy for various reasons, basically since I started my blog, Crafting an MBA. So it's not surprising to me that Etsy enacted these fees, because if you look at the history of Etsy is really the history of almost all labor, but in particularly in tech, the exploitation of the people who make the platform possible. Etsy's business model from the beginning was to exploit the people making the product. Not surprising, because the majority of Etsy sellers are women. A 2020 study said, I believe, over 80% of Etsy sellers are women. One of the categories that is really ripe for worker exploitation. And the reason that I say that Etsy has exploited their workers is because all of the risk and all of the investment is pushed to the Etsy sellers, right? So when you make a product for Etsy, you are paying your 20% listing fee, and Etsy is benefiting from your labor. So first of all, they're benefiting from your labor whether you sell or not, because you've paid your 20% listing fee. But then of course they are benefiting from your labor because whether you sell or not, they've now got this product on their website that they can share and promote in the same way that a platform like Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or TikTok promotes or profits from our labor, because we are doing the work but not necessarily being fairly compensated for it. So it should come as no surprise that Etsy is once again raising seller fees, because Etsy is not in the, no matter what they say, Etsy is not at the fundamental business model level. Etsy is not in the business of protecting the people who make their platform. They are in the business of protecting, especially now that they're a publicly traded company, their shareholders. The business model is built on exploitation. And this is one of the big reasons that I have always encouraged artists and makers to not just sell on Etsy. We're going to get to why you might still want to sell on Etsy, and that's okay. We're going to get to that in a second. But this is why I strongly encourage artists and makers to sell on another platform, because Etsy just doesn't have your best interest at heart. And when you are sending your customers directly to Etsy, they are always a click away from your competitors. That's the way that the Etsy model is built. And so if you haven't made the switch yet, this is a great time to think about making the switch. If you're unsure, I will say straight off the bat, I love Shopify. I highly recommend people use Shopify. It's a platform that I have used for years. So many of the people I coach and artists and profit makers use Shopify. It is always my best recommendation. But if you're still feeling stuck, I will also say that I have a course on Creative Live called Beyond Etsy. If you go onto creativelive.com and search Beyond Etsy, you'll find my course, which basically walks you through choosing the right platform if you're ready to make the switch away from Etsy. What I would also recommend is for any consumers out there watching this, that this is a great week not to not support artists and handmade business, but to not support them on Etsy and to figure out how to give them money other ways. So if they have a website, please go spend money on their website. If they don't have a website, reach out to them. DM them, email them, ask if there's another way you can give them money, PayPal, Venmo, whatever it is. Please continue to support artists and makers this week. Just do it outside of Etsy so that the strike really functions and that their voices are heard. So that is the first piece. If you're ready to move off of Etsy, please do it. It is not the be all end all. But I also fully acknowledge that Etsy brings with it a lot of opportunities. Etsy brought a lot of opportunities for me when I was first starting my business. I started selling on Etsy in 2007. I was an Etsy featured seller in 2009. I got into my first trade show because the panel recognized me from my Etsy store. Etsy provides opportunities. I am not denying that. And so if Etsy provides opportunities for you, once the strike is over, you do not have to feel guilty about continuing to sell on Etsy in addition to whatever your other platform is. Because I see this a lot with my group and artists and profit makers. There are some people who do very well on Etsy because Etsy, when it works and when they're supportive, Etsy can be really great. So don't feel like when the strike is over that you maybe have to abandon Etsy completely if it is an important and essential part of your revenue. But what I want to bring up about this is that while I 100% do, like, no confusion, I think that Etsy increasing their fees is wrong. I think it's wrong because they are making record profit and they are passing that profit on to shareholders. They're not passing that profit on to sellers. So again, don't mistake me. I 100% think Etsy raising fees is wrong. But what I will also say is if your products are priced appropriately, and here I'm talking about physical products, digital products function in a slightly different way, but even still, if your products are priced appropriately so that you are profitable at the wholesale level, which is what I teach in all of my classes, if you are profitable at the wholesale level, then when you do your wholesale to retail markup, which is 100% the price you should be at when you're selling on Etsy, you're not selling at Etsy on your wholesale price, you're selling at Etsy on your retail price. If you're priced appropriately, in your retail profit margin, in that markup from wholesale to retail, you should be able to absorb the Etsy fees. And so this is the conversation that I also think is important to have. Again, do I think Etsy is wrong for raising fees? Yes. But do I also think that you should be priced so that you are profitable at the wholesale level so that you could absorb a 6.5% retail fee? Also, yes. Again, doesn't make Etsy right. I'm just saying that if you are priced appropriately, that is a fee that you should be able to absorb into your cost and into your profit structure. And this is one of, again, my biggest complaints about Etsy from the beginning. If you go back to my blog, you will see I wrote an article called Etsy and the Culture of Cheap all the way back in, I think, 2010, early 2010. And I wrote this article because the problem with Etsy is also that there is downward price pressure. So artists and makers sell on Etsy and they look around and they say, well, this person is selling for this, so I feel like I have to lower my prices. And it becomes this race to the bottom. And Etsy has done nothing to stop it. Etsy has done nothing to stop themselves from seeing artists and makers basically continue to self-exploit in this race to the bottom of prices. So part of the reason that this Etsy fee increase is so problematic is because so many Etsy sellers are not priced profitably. And just to be clear, I'm not blaming you guys for this. I am blaming Etsy for creating an atmosphere that generates this race to the bottom, right? I'm blaming Etsy. They have done nothing or almost nothing to prevent that. And then I'm just saying there's a lack of information, right? I have been very vocal in the way that I've taught pricing for over a decade. and really making sure that artists and makers are profitable at the wholesale level so that you can have the prices that would support something like a 6.5 fee off of your retail margin on Etsy. But a lot of artists and makers aren't pricing like that, either because they don't know or because they get scared because they see this downward price spiral that's created on Etsy, and then that ripples out into the rest of the art and handmade community. So I just wanted to share all of that because, like I said, 100% I support the Etsy strike, but I think the conversation is more nuanced than that. And so I really want to encourage every artist and maker who sells on Etsy to take this moment as an opportunity to evaluate where your business is at. Really take the time and say, is only selling on Etsy serving me? Chances are it's probably not. And it's time to think about adding an additional platform, even if when the strike is over, you still continue to sell on Etsy. And it's also time to really look at your prices and say, if I can't support this 6.5% transaction fee at retail, am I really priced profitably, and where do I need to be? Just to give myself a little shout out, I will say that I am working on a really exciting new pricing product that I'm hoping to roll out next week. Spoiler alert, it's some spreadsheets that do the math for you. So keep an eye out for those. I'm talking about this not because I'm trying to, tease them to sell them. Okay, maybe I am. I am in business after all too, but because I'm so excited about them, because like I said, so many artists and makers don't have good information when it comes to pricing, and they're not pricing in a way that's profitable. And so that's one of my missions, is to really help you guys do that. So thank you guys so much for listening. Again, I fully support the Etsy strike. Stand strong, guys. And please, if you're a consumer, please support artists and makers off of Etsy this week. It is really, really essential. Losing a full week of revenue is honestly a bigger hardship for the artists and makers than it is for Etsy. So please find ways to support them off of Etsy. They could really use your support this week and really help show Etsy that we're not here for worker exploitation, because at the end of the day, Etsy sellers, they may call them sellers, but they are workers for Etsy, and Etsy is exploiting you. So please stand in solidarity with the Etsy strikers. And if you are an Etsy seller, please take this week to really look over your business and see if things need to change, because you do not have to stand for policies from Etsy or any other platform that is not there to serve and support you. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you around.